Hello and welcome. I appreciate everybody joining us today for Meridian's monthly webinar. This one happens to be titled Double Trouble Using NetSuite to Eliminate Duplicate Entry and Disparate Systems. Before I get started, I'd like to just mention everybody, if you have any questions, feel free to ask during the chat window. I'll be answering any questions that may pop up in the chat window. Try to answer those in real time or as soon as possible. Look forward to diving into this topic. This is a topic that we see quite frequently with small and mid-sized companies. And, if you've joined me in the previous webinar series, you might have seen this slide before, but it's one of my favorite slides. And I really want to mention this again because I think it's extremely important for small and mid-sized companies. There's a huge competitive advantage right now for small businesses to be able to compete and win. And it's what Gartner, a third-party analyst firm, calls the nexus of forces. It's giving businesses the chance to invest in powerful technology that can be implemented quickly at a fraction of the price of previous software. So if this technology is used properly, small businesses can build a customer experience and business agility that's often a lot more difficult for large companies to replicate. So it creates agility. And that's one of the topics that we'll be talking on today, is just the importance of agility for small and mid-sized businesses. And really knowing how to capitalize on the available technology and willingness to try is critical for organizations. So the 5 challenges that we see from organizations that we're going to focus on today running disparate systems. And so when we talk about disparate systems, oftentimes it might be one system for accounting, another for CRM, another for maybe for one payroll, et cetera. And oftentimes the disconnected nature of those systems requires multiple data entry, wasting time, or just inefficiencies in the process flow between those systems. Also creates challenges with real-time visibility. So being able to line up data in one system to data in another to get the full picture either of your customer, of the, or of your inventory or of the organization. The third issue that we see and that we'll focus on during today's conversation is just the excess costs that it takes running different systems. So not only is there the cost of the software, I went through, an exercise with an organization recently that was running Salesforce for CRM and evaluating NetSuite, and realized that the amount of money they were going to save just in a couple of years on the NetSuite platform by not having to have duplicate licenses between Salesforce and NetSuite would pay for the complete implementation cost of the NetSuite platform and give them much better visibility into the organization. And so those, we'll dig into the excess costs both in maintaining those systems and the licensing, and then also maintaining the integrations between the different systems. The fourth area is one I touched on in the previous slide, and really business agility. So how do you create an agile business to compete in today's ever-changing technology landscape and world where consumers and your customers have expectations higher than they've ever had before from your organization? And then really creating, I mentioned this once before, but creating process efficiency across the organization. So how do your processes flow, whether it's from the lead to cash cycle, where you bring in a sales lead, work that as an opportunity in a traditional CRM, all the way through to the fulfillment, item fulfillment, and cash receipt. So how does that single process flow through the system without a break in the audit trail, and being able to see the visibility throughout that process of the customer? And that's just one example. Procure to pay is another example. On the e-commerce, on the reporting side, there's other examples, and so we'll dive into some of those. Start with the first one, though. I mentioned the inefficiencies of a standalone system and the time wasted from multiple data entry. So the symptoms that we see of those inefficiencies are non-value-added activities. So having to, rekey that data and utilizing employee resources to rekey data, where they could actually be analyzing the data or making the next sale. We talked about the lack of real-time visibility, so being able to see the visibility throughout the whole organizational structure, and the cost and complexity of integrations and increased customer churn as a result of those multiple systems. So the improvements that we see in having a single system of record that really manages your whole organization from accounting to inventory to e-commerce to CRM to even HR, payroll, et cetera, business intelligence, for instance, talk about that as well, are streamlining communication. So having everybody in the same system on the same page and enforcing accountability so you can see what everybody else is doing without having to log into a separate system, whether it's e-commerce, being able to see all the e-commerce data and the analytics right on the same system that you're seeing your financial, where you're seeing, your sales pipeline. And then minimizing the costs and manual errors in having to rekey that data or having data in separate systems. A common one that I see in organizations is with the commission sheets. Sales, if they're keeping commission tracking in the CRM and it's not, even if it is connected, oftentimes the accounting system has a different record of what the commission should be based on their sales. And having that data all in one system, there's no more coming to a meeting and two different departments having different sets of reports or different expectations. Everybody's working out of the same system. The fourth area of improvement that we see is being able to keep a tab on your business. So removing that dependency on institutional knowledge that, Bob in the warehouse knows how to do this, has always done it this way, that is now you create a repeatable set of processes, which is important in business growth as well. And then establishing a clear approval hierarchy. So, if sales orders need approval, over a certain level, that approval hierarchy, naturally flows, from the CRM right into the accounting side and the fulfillment side, and that there isn't a break in that approval of those sales orders or having to do it in an outside system. And, really the sixth is similar to that there's a seamless audit trail of data. So who did what to whom, essentially within the system. And there isn't a break in that audit trail between two different systems. You can see every change that was made across the departments and be able to report on that as well. So you look at a company like Glassdoor, who's been running NetSuite for a number of years. If you're not familiar with Glassdoor, it is a company review website and an employment website. And, as their VP of Finance said, they really wanted to invest in streamlining the operations to grow the business and not having to invest in IT infrastructure. And so by replacing all their different systems with NetSuite, they're able to increase their volume by 5 times, but they didn't have to add staff to do that, and actually able to reduce the monthly close as well. So I think that's key, is doing more with less on one system. So the second area, and this is one of my favorite areas, I believe that there's a huge value to an organization on having business intelligence and being able to have a clear vision of what's happening in the organization in real time. So that real-time visibility and a unified customer view. So I see a lot of organizations that look like this. If you draw out their hairball of systems diagrams, where you have a number of different systems for different solutions, whether it's one system for accounting, another one for support, another one for the website, for CRM or Salesforce automation, another one, and trying to connect all of these different systems with these red lines indicating integration points. And then, as we'll talk about later on in the IT, what happens when you want to update one? Do you break that integration point to the other, through that update process? So it becomes exponentially, more costly having all those different integration points between the systems, and it makes it hard to see the data as well. So bringing together, NetSuite's view and our view here at Meridian Business Services of bringing together the data in one location. So both front office sales, web, field service with the back office, warehousing manufacturing, distribution, and accounting, and having that really all combined by deep visibility inventory. And what that provides is along each of these channels, we have the customer 360. So we get a really clear visibility of the customer, the customer CRM record, even being able to bring in e-commerce data, because the e-commerce is natively part of the same database in the NetSuite world. So we're able to see on the customer record abandoned cart information, session analytics, how many pages did they view, what pages were they on, where were their interest levels. So not having to log into a separate system to see all of that information, but having it natively part of the system that's running our organization. The second one is the item 360. So the item record flows throughout, not having to have a separate PIM, a product information management system, to manage that product data. So if a sales rep is in there and talking to a customer, they are able to see the items that customer and the item data regarding that item as well, right out of the same system, and that's driving what's on the website as well. And then the order 360. As we'll talk more about what we call the Amazon effect later on, but as customers have higher expectations, being able to communicate those expectations with the customer and provide clear visibility as far as where the order status, allowing them to even change that order status in real time. So they purchase something, but maybe they want to log in and change that right after the fact. Or a common case is they purchase it online and then they realize they need to make a modification or change that order and are able to call in right away and speak to somebody over the phone, and that support individual is using the same system. Everything is in the same database, so there's no disconnect on that order. When we talk about data and visibility, it's really important that the data-driven world that we live in to have easy access to that data. So across any device, in any location, whether it's a cell phone, a tablet, or a desktop, having all of these data points and having them out of the box so that they're not all graphs and charts that you have to build, but are built for you, out of the box of the system. And that's part of what NetSuite is able to provide. Another key feature with a business intelligence system that's important is having it role-based. You certainly don't want, the shipping manager to see, the same financial data the CFO is seeing. And so having, specific views for each of those users. We'll touch more on that in a second, but also from the same standpoint of having, I have a lot of organizations I work with that are both in wholesale distribution and manufacturing, and a number of them have two separate systems, one ERP system for wholesale distribution, another one for manufacturing, because they can't support that. NetSuite's not the case there. NetSuite supports a wide variety of business models and has that functionality all in one system, all in that database to support those business models. So the same system, the same instance of NetSuite that is running a wholesale distribution company where inventory supply to do a service, can also support the services division where that item is, is sold, and then there's a installation to that item. So the service delivery of that, and then also able to support manufacturing as well. So, and then even technology of selling recurring subscription for that item. So in this case, we're looking at a wholesale distribution dashboard, focusing on supply chain, focusing on inventory, whereas in the same system, we can also have a production dashboard focusing on work orders, focusing on deep manufacturing capabilities that, are similar to what you find in a leading manufacturing ERP system. And that's because NetSuite is a leading manufacturing ERP system, a leading distribution ERP system, and, a leading services ERP system all in one. NetSuite's used by about 40,000, probably even closer to 50,000 organizations now globally. And of those, about 15,000 of that 50,000 are in the wholesale distribution and light manufacturing space. So definitely a focus for organizations dealing with the movement of physical goods. Coming back to our role-based business intelligence, you can see this is a dashboard in NetSuite. If I come right here, you can see that I'm logged in as a senior executive. And so as a senior executive, I can see income, I can see sales, my reminders are, you know, able to manage by exception, so maybe it's delayed orders or customers that haven't been touched in a long time. Where if I, turn out, there we go, come over to this role, now I'm in a project manager role where I'm looking at projects, let's say, come back to an organization that has services. And in this role, I'm an inventory manager, so, you know, it might be somebody in the warehouse, all out of the same system, you know, all with a different set of KPIs, reminders, analytics that are driving my day. And this is all out of the box. NetSuite has what we call the Suite Success Program. So everything that you see here is out of the box for an organization that's like yours. Once again, another role is a sales representative role as well, where I'm seeing my leads, my sales, my pipeline, et cetera. Another thing that's important with being able to have all that data in one system is it's great to see it rolled up, but how do we drill down into that data as well? So, you know, if we click on this number, let's say I want to know what makes up that 1.2 million in income this quarter. And by clicking right on it from the dashboard, we have drill down capabilities to be able to drill down into the underlying data set. And so here you can see it's broken out by quarter and by the chart of accounts as well. And then all the way down to the invoice level, we can drill down, you know, to that data. So we can consolidate it and drill down in real time. So I thought this quote was really helpful to summarize that point, is that according to Arboricultural Association, which runs NetSuite, with NetSuite, all of our data is 100% accurate and presented in real time. And it's available at the click of a button. It's made a huge difference in the way they've worked, and it's made a huge difference in the way that 50,000 plus organizations have, you know, run their businesses. Also, it brings us to the third point of, you know, ways that we see organizations benefiting from having all of their data in one system, and that's saving in excess IT costs over having multiple systems. So come back to this hairball diagram. We touched on it earlier, but each integration point is an opportunity to either hold up an upgrade to, you know, to one of these systems, because this integration point might break if we upgrade this one, and you know, that data then isn't flowing over to our, you know, from our CRM system to our accounting. And so that's really one of the challenges that we see, is it becomes very costly to do integrations, and what ends up happening is organizations end up becoming 4, 5, 6 years, since some of their 10, 15 years behind on updating their systems because they're concerned about the cost of updating it and the breaking those integration points between the different systems. So not only is it difficult to manage those integrations, it's costly, and then it leads to organizations not wanting to update one of the systems out of fear of breaking the other ones as well. So these are just a few of the areas. There's, you know, not to mention payroll, expense management, incentive compensation, billing. You know, there's dozens more of departmental systems commonly, or, you know, point solution systems that can be aggregated into NetSuite's, you know, single approach. And so a third-party firm, Nucleus Research, did a study on software companies moving from on-premise applications to NetSuite, and found that on average they reduced their software license maintenance fees by $23,000 per year, and had IT cost savings for those companies of 50 to 65% of time of IT time. Here at Meridian, we actually had one customer that consolidated from 18 disparate systems to one, NetSuite. You know, you can imagine just how much that simplified their day-to-day operations and the amount of visibility that provided into the organization as well. So NetSuite, works, that happened to be, an organization that was on the larger side, but, also have organizations on the smaller side as well and have seen similar results. So this is another one of my favorite topics, is really providing the agility for future growth and expansion. You look at what's happened in our society over the last 10 years. I think it was just 11 years ago that the iPhone was introduced, and the change that has made over the last 11 years. The 20 years ago, the internet was in its infancy. And 30 years ago was the personal computer revolution. So we have seen a tremendous, growth in technology, and you have to account for where that's going to go in the future and provide an agile business model. There's a quote recently that I saw that I think it was almost 50% of the Fortune 500 companies that existed 20 years ago are no longer around. They've either been consumed, they've merged, they are no longer on the Fortune 500. So, large companies and small companies have to, realize the need for agility, and really brings up this quote, it's the Darwin quote, but it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones that are most responsive to change. So having an agile platform that allows for ease of change. And we're seeing a lot of digital disruptors in today's world. Who would have guessed 10 years ago that the world's largest taxi company, Uber, owns no vehicles, that the world's most popular media owner doesn't create content? How about that the largest accommodation provider doesn't own any real estate? So these organizations are moving in to the market and, creating incredible disruption. I saw a quote actually this morning that was somewhat to the effect of, Google is a $200 billion company that owns no assets. Compare that to United Airlines, which has a $52 billion market cap, and all the assets that they own, the licenses that they have, the lucrative licensing on routes and other opportunities that a company like United Airlines has, and that is amazing. The difference that you see there. So there are threats in all markets of digital disruptors, and how can you either be a digital disruptor or not get disrupted in your market? And so the Gartner, another third-party research firm, suggests that mid-sized wholesale distribution companies with low to average strategic focus and investment on digital commerce are at 70% greater risk to see declining revenues over the next 3 years, and 65% greater risk to be out of business altogether in 5 years. That is amazing, because there's a lot of wholesale distribution companies that are 50, 60, 70, 100 years old in the marketplace, and their industry is getting disrupted. Ones that have been doing business the same way for a long time. And what it's saying is those mid-sized distributors that have been doing business the same way for 50, 100 years are at incredible risk for going out of business because of the change that we're seeing. It comes back to Darwin's quote about the responsiveness to change. So on the other hand, wholesale distributors who are making a strong strategy and executing on digital commerce will see double-digit growth. They're the ones that are eating up that smaller business, that smaller piece of the pie. It reminds me, I have a good friend that is in the printing business, and he came to me and said, I have a paper vendor. I'd love to use them. I think it's they're somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion in annual revenue is his estimate. And he'd love to use that mid-sized regional paper vendor to provide his paper. They said they're not providing e-commerce to me. I can't order online, and I just need them to make it easy to me so I can manage my orders online. And he continued to use that. He didn't like the huge global behemoth because he runs a small business himself, but continues to use that $6 billion paper writer that he doesn't really love, but because they make it easy for him to order. So I think that's a great example of what we're talking about here. It's about the customer experience, ease of ordering, you know, and providing a you know, value-driven experience to your customers. That's only going to become more important over time, and that's, you know, comes from having an agile business environment and having technology that's agile to make that change as well. So, and you look at it, you know, respondents were asked how much of their company's revenues would be at risk in the next 3 years if those companies took no action to address their digital pressures. And many of those companies estimate that almost 1/3 could be lost or cannibalized, 1/3 of their business. Might even be bigger if you look at, you know, what Gartner is suggesting up above. So there is, you know, a huge shift happening, and, you know, in terms of what can you do, companies are, you know, really looking forward to digital strategies and focusing on digital strategies. So McKinsey did a survey on distribution channels, and the primary focus, you know, is on marketing and distribution. And really, we look at that as, you know, an integrated e-commerce platform, and that's almost 49% of companies are focusing on this top area here. So it's really critical, and just, you know, an e-commerce platform has really become table stakes for staying in the game over the next couple of years. So standing pat is just not an option in the digital world that we live in. And I liken it to this as well. I personally call it the Amazon and Google effect. And so if you look at it, customers expect a world-class customer experience, you know, both traditional and digital. So I talk to a lot of companies that say we're service businesses, and it comes back to that paper distributor I mentioned earlier. I'm sure that that regional paper distributor sees themselves as a service business. They pride themselves on their relationship. But part of that relationship is making it easy to order online, having an easy digital experience as well. And so, you know, world-class e-commerce like Amazon has set really high standards for customers. They expect real-time stock levels, you know, confirmed delivery schedules, and then the ability, like I mentioned earlier, to call customer service minutes after placing an order and add an extra line. And when an organization isn't able to provide that, it's the Google effect. We will Google somebody new to find us, or somebody will show up at our door, probably has already been knocking for a while, to provide a better customer experience. So just want to come back, that customer experience is not what it used to be 10, 20 years ago. Still, service, the relationship is very important, but you have to have the technology there to augment that relationship and augment an ease of service and a level of service to your customers. That's what they want, and that's what they're demanding, because Amazon has set that bar very high. So you might be asking, oh, we've talked a lot about agile approach. What does that have to do with NetSuite? Well, NetSuite really provides a development environment and the tools for all users in an organization to access that and create agility within the organization. So from the user base, you know, consumer-based UI that the users, non-technical users, so just basic business users, can find the information they need. They can create charts and searches on their dashboard and surface information that's important. And that information that's important today might be different. It will be different a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But having the flexibility to easily change that information, you know, could even be different tomorrow, you know, as market conditions change. So having the ability to surface that information easily to your end users. From a business analyst standpoint, so being able to easily create workflows, agile workflows, and then change those over time, add fields, for instance, as additional data is necessary. And then from a development standpoint, so these two are really about, you know, low code or no code development, not having to hire a software developer to do that. From a development standpoint, being able to develop out business processes as well if you need additional resources that aren't able to be provided in those first two categories. And then having deep administration and governance with, you know, high reliability in the platform is important. So the NetSuite platform covers all of that in addition to a rich partner ecosystem on the suiteapp.com Store with publish partners connectors that can easily download it into your instance. For instance, shipping is one that's common, being able to integrate LTL shipping and quote that right out of the system and having that native interface. So we touched on the workflows in the previous slide. I'll just touch on it once again, being able to build out those workflows in a graphical, some people might be familiar with the Microsoft application called Visio, a Visio-like application for developing those workflows and processes. Speaking of processes, moving on to our fifth point, this is our fifth of six, so we are nearing the third baseline here, is process efficiency across the organization. So the key to avoiding manual and duplicative work is to ensure that your core business processes are seamlessly integrated from the front office to the back office. So the sales side feeding back through to fulfillment to the warehouse, the manufacturing shop floor, and automating as many of those processes as possible. So you don't have to worry about rekeying of data in two different systems. I see that really commonly in organizations where one system has a set of data and then the order goes through and they have to put it in the accounting system. And maybe you have to put it, again in the warehouse management system. So having everything in one system so that data flows through. And so you're able to redeploy that time, that staff time, to higher value activities that really help the business innovate and grow, coming back to agility. Another thing is being able to surface that data and find that data in a reasonable way. So we call it managing by exception, but having those exceptions on the individual user dashboards for what they need to manage their day and being able to customize these. So on the dashboard of a warehouse manager, we have purchase orders, the orders to receive, orders to fulfill, RMAs. On sales, we have opportunities to close. Maybe it's leads without sales activity in the last week. On production manager, from a manufacturing standpoint, we have, work orders to build. Maybe it's planning and capacity on the production manager as well. And then senior executive, is commonly managing by exception. So bookings with less than 15% gross profit. What are those ones that as a senior executive, I want to make sure that bubble up to my dashboard and I'm aware of those issues before they become a bigger issue. Maybe it's a new salesperson that's, selling for less than we should, and our margins, we want to handle, make sure that we resolve that before our margins drop off too far. Another thing along the same lines is creating dashboards with handoffs to others. So in the service world, in our world, we are a service business and implement NetSuite, and we commonly have, an opportunity. We're, working with an organization to evaluate NetSuite, and we go through the, scoping process. And so that might show up on the dashboard of a professional services director as opportunities that need to be scoped. So when I, as a salesperson, set the status that needs scoping, all of a sudden this opportunity shows up on our professional services dashboard that he now has some work to do. That same theory goes with, an expense report needing approval, or, a wide variety of, maybe in manufacturing it's a, made-to-order item that needs to be approved, or the items need to be ordered. And once that made-to-order item is placed, there's, a process that needs to take place on the back end, and that order automatically flows through to the appropriate person's dashboard that they need to take action. So yet another technology company that is, running NetSuite, and in this case, Doug Harr, the CIO of Splunk, the data intelligence company, said running on, NetSuite allowed us to spend time drilling into and analyzing the data to maximize their corporate performance instead of copying and combining data from different systems, re-entering that data. So really getting away from having to manually enter data to providing value-added services against that data. So now that we've really concluded, our time in evaluating all of those different areas, let's talk for a second about why, Meridian Services and why we work with the NetSuite platform. NetSuite was rated by IDC, once again a third-party analyst firm, as the leader in mid-market ERP applications. So IDC gave it a, and I should say that's cloud-based ERP applications. So out of all the cloud-based platforms, IDC gave it the lead. NetSuite is also owned by Oracle, so Oracle's legacy platform and NetSuite both received extremely high accolades from IDC. And one of the reasons that I think plays into the conversation today is that digitally transformed businesses, and this is a direct quote from the IDC report, is that digitally transformed businesses have a repeatable set of practices and disciplines used to leverage new business. That's a large part of what we talked about today, is how do you create those processes, that data flow, the data visibility. Also the basis for our conversation today, IDC called out in the report, is that NetSuite holds an edge over its competitors as all ERP modules run in a single database and a single code base. This attribute is an attribute that few other vendors in the ERP market are currently providing in the cloud. And that's huge. So what that means is that all of the data, whether it's the sales CRM data, the accounting, the inventory data, the warehouse, the e-commerce, all of that exists in the single database, the same database, intertwined together in one system. And then what it means by the single code base is NetSuite actually has a patented process of releasing updates twice a year to the software platform. So no company left behind. Every company is on the most recent version of the platform and always able to utilize the latest tools available, which come back to agility in a business environment, makes for a great deal of agility on the platform. And they also called out that having all of the data in a single code base and a single database provided quicker access to data relative to other solutions and easier to update as well. One other thing I'll mention is that this is for mid-market. Gartner, I don't believe I have the slide in here, but Gartner also released a report in May naming NetSuite as a leader in companies of all size in cloud ERP, whether it's, small, mid-market, or enterprise. And it had more, Gartner also called out that more organizations run NetSuite than any other platform that was on that particular, the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And so what that means is that you can start on NetSuite and you can scale to any size. There are large corporations that run portions of their business on NetSuite, highly scalable platform that run global enterprises, names like Land O'Lakes, the butter, Shaw Carpet, Williams-Sonoma, down to, small mom and pop shops with just a couple employees. And so I think as you've, seen during today's conversation, that NetSuite has proven benefits having all of that data in one system, in a modern system, a reduction in the monthly financial close, the quarterly close, reducing invoicing costs by 45 to 75% by automating that. Days sales outstanding, really important, managing cash flow, improving that days sales outstanding by 10 to 20%, improvements in order efficiency. As we've touched on a lot today, 50 to 80% increased visibility, that 360-degree visibility of the organization. And also, as we touched on, the reduction in IT costs by not having to manage disparate systems, managing the integration points between those, and making it easier to manage by not having any hardware on site because everything is hosted in the cloud. So last slide, a little more about Meridian. We have 10 years of experience as NetSuite. We actually started off using NetSuite for some of our accounting clients. We are a professional services firm with a CPA background, so we're started by several CPAs that really focus on technology, accounting, and professional services of improving the, organization of our clients. And Meridian has a proven implementation model that, produces bottom line results and operational efficiencies. And part of it is just that many of our implementation consultants have operational end user experience, have sat in your shoes, have been in purchasing, have been in management, you know, of wholesale distribution, manufacturing, services companies, and know the challenges that an organization faces and, you know, utilize leading practices. So we are certified as what's called Suite Success, and so we're a NetSuite certified Suite Success partner. Less than 0.25% of partners are Suite Success rated. We also are in the top, we're a 5-star partner, which means we're in the top 10% of NetSuite partners as well. So, you know, as a NetSuite partner, an organization that you can trust with, you know, one of your most valuable assets, your business and your people, and helping to improve that. So once again, really appreciate you joining our webinar today. The next webinar is next week, next Tuesday. Please note the time change. It'll be 1 p.m. Central Time. And this is a partner webinar with our partner DSI, and we'll be talking about planning for the ERP of the future, optimizing your supply chain with Oracle plus NetSuite, and utilizing the DSI platform as well. So we'll be have a customer, mutual customer, both ours and our partner DSI, Briggs Healthcare, to talk about their experience, you know, moving to the NetSuite platform and continuing to utilize their existing investment in the DSI mobile supply chain platform. So once again, thank you for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and thank you.